5-time tag team champion. That's a legacy right there, and Tony Garea earned it. But have you ever wondered what happens when the cameras stop rolling? For Garea, the story definitely doesn't end with those title reigns. In fact, it gets pretty interesting and a little controversial. When most people think of Tony Garea, they think of him as a tag team specialist. He made a name for himself alongside some of the biggest names in the business. In fact, Garea won the WWF World Tag Team Championship 5 times. That's right, 5. But there's more to him than just the tag team championships. His life was filled with controversies, and even today, at 78 years old, he really can't come off as clean. He had a solid career as a tag team wrestler and later worked as a road agent in the WWF, helping coordinate backstage stuff. But in 2001, his name got caught up in a major controversy that not many people saw coming. It all started with a lawsuit filed by Nicole Bass, a former WWF wrestler, where she accused the company of sexual harassment, assault, and unsafe working conditions. Bass had worked with the WWF in 1999, right in the middle of the Attitude Era, when the company was all about pushing boundaries. But for Bass, her time there was a lot less glamorous. In her lawsuit, she made some pretty serious accusations against several people in the company. She said Steve Lombardi, known as the Brooklyn Brawler, made sexual advances and groped her. She also claimed that Shawn Michaels simulated a sexual act with her using a microphone during a live broadcast. But the most shocking part of her lawsuit was when she said that during the 1999 Over the Edge pay-per-view, she was struck with a guitar that hadn't been properly gimmicked. In the middle of all these serious allegations, Tony Garea's name came up as well. According to the court documents, Bass said she was accosted by several people at the company while she was getting changed. She specifically mentioned Garea, along with a few others like Earl Hebner, Paul White, and Billy Gunn. It was a big deal because Garea, who was known for being a pretty low-key and respected guy, didn't seem like someone who would be involved in something like that. What made Bass's lawsuit even bigger was the way she framed the whole thing. She wasn't just saying that a few people acted inappropriately. She argued that this kind of behavior was part of a bigger problem at the WWF. According to Bass and her legal team, it wasn't uncommon for male employees to invade the women's locker rooms, and the company didn't do anything to stop it. Bass wasn't just pointing fingers at a few individuals. She was saying that the whole company allowed this kind of thing to happen, and that's what made it so much worse. It wasn't just about the people who were involved in her case. It was about the culture that allowed it. As for Garea, there's not much on his side of the story. After the lawsuit came out, he did mention being involved in some legal proceedings with the company, but he didn't go into much detail about what happened with Bass. In a later interview, he talked about being questioned in court, but he didn't say anything that directly addressed her claims. He did say he was telling the truth during the process, but he didn't elaborate on what that meant or what had really happened. Another one of the most damaging labels Garea got hit with was being a stooge. In wrestling, calling someone a stooge is not a compliment. It basically means they're seen as someone who sucks up to management, spies on other wrestlers, and passes along private info to keep their job secure. It's a huge betrayal of the locker room's trust, and if you're labeled a stooge, it's tough to shake that reputation. The loudest voice against Garea came from his former tag team partner, Larry Zbyszko. In a shoot interview, Larry didn't hold back. He claimed that Garea told his wife to move from her seat at a venue, even making her sit all the way in the rafters. Larry, not happy about it, confronted Garea and basically said, "Don't ever tell my wife to move again or else." He also said that other veterans like Bruno Sammartino and Dominic DeNucci had warned him about Garea, claiming he was known for stooging on the boys. He also offered a reason why some wrestlers might act this way, suggesting it came from insecurity. If someone wasn't confident in their wrestling abilities, they might rely on playing politics behind the scenes to keep their spot. Zbyszko believed Garea's success, especially his multiple tag team title wins, might have been about more than just his in-ring work. He implied that Garea might have used backstage connections to get ahead, rather than earning everything purely through merit and respect. There's one more rumor that's been floating around for years about Tony Garea and his long stay in WWE, especially his time as a road agent after his wrestling career ended. Some people have speculated that his long tenure with the company was due to a close relationship with Pat Patterson, who was a major figure in WWE for decades. Some even suggest that the relationship was romantic. Now, it's important to say right off the bat that this rumor doesn't have any solid proof behind it. Most of what we know about this theory comes from online wrestling fans discussing things in forums like Reddit. There's nothing official or credible, no interviews, no reports, nothing that backs up this claim. It's all speculation, just fans trying to make sense of why Garea stayed in WWE for so long after his prime wrestling years. The reason people might believe this rumor in the first place is because of Garea's surprising longevity in WWE. He wasn't exactly a top-tier star like Hulk Hogan or Randy Savage, but he stayed on as a road agent for nearly 30 years after his wrestling career. That raises a lot of questions. How does someone stay around that long, especially when they're not in the spotlight anymore? People started looking for an explanation, and one of the simplest theories was that Garea owed his job security to his relationship with Patterson, who had a ton of influence in WWE at the time. Patterson was Vince McMahon's right-hand man, and he played a huge role in shaping the company's creative direction. So having a strong relationship with him could definitely give someone an edge in the company. Garea and Patterson also worked together in the past, especially in the 1970s when they were a successful tag team in the NWA San Francisco territory. So naturally, some people thought that maybe their connection went beyond just being colleagues and friends. But here's where the rumor starts to fall apart. The facts don't really support the idea of a romantic relationship. Garea was married with a family, and Patterson, who was openly gay, had a longtime partner, Louis Dondro, who he was with for decades until Dondro's death in 1998. There's no evidence to suggest that Garea and Patterson were romantically involved, and it doesn't line up with the known details of their personal lives. Instead, it's much more likely that Garea stayed in WWE because of his professionalism and his long-standing working relationship with the company. As a road agent, Garea was a trusted figure who helped manage talent behind the scenes. That role required a lot of experience, and clearly Garea had it. He was known for getting along with management, especially Vince McMahon Jr., and he was respected for his work behind the scenes. So where did this rumor come from? It probably stemmed from a combination of factors. First, Garea's long career in WWE raised some eyebrows, especially since he wasn't a top star. Fans tend to wonder how someone can stay in a company for so long without being a major draw. Then you have Patterson's influence. He was a key figure in WWE for years, and any close relationship with him would have been beneficial to Garea's career. And of course, wrestling fans love to speculate. They're always trying to figure out the real reasons behind things that happen backstage. And if they don't have all the information, they'll fill in the gaps with what makes sense to them. But there's more to him than just controversies. This man had a career so epic that you deserve to know every detail about it. Tony Garea's story in the wrestling world is one of dedication, hard work, and a real passion for the sport that kept him going for years. Born in New Zealand, he made his way to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in the early 70s, and from the moment he stepped in, he caught people's attention. What stood out about Tony wasn't flashy moves or a big persona, but his technical skills in the ring. He was a wrestler's wrestler, someone who could really go in the ring and make a match look seamless. And it didn't take long for him to prove himself. By 1973, he earned a Shared Rookie of the Year award, which set him up for what would become a long and successful career. But even though Tony could hold his own in singles matches, it was in tag team wrestling where he really started to shine. His first big championship win came in 1973 when he teamed up with Haystacks Calhoun, a huge guy with plenty of presence, to win the World Tag Team Championship. They defeated Mr. Fuji and Professor Toru Tanaka, which was a pretty impressive feat for their first time out. Their reign was short, though, lasting just a few months before they lost the titles. But Tony wasn't done there. He quickly teamed up with Dean Ho, and together they took the titles from Fuji and Tanaka again. This time, they held on to the belts for 175 days, a much longer run. But as often happens in wrestling, their reign eventually came to an end when the Valiant brothers took them down in 1974. The thing about Tony was that he didn't just stay stagnant in one spot. As his career went on, he kept finding new partners and kept making it work. In 1977, he teamed with Larry Zbyszko, and in 1978, they won the vacant tag team titles in a tournament. They faced off against the Yukon Lumberjacks, a team that had a strong reputation, and took the win. Unfortunately, like his previous reigns, it didn't last long. By 1979, the Valiant brothers were back on top, taking the titles from them. Even though Garea's reigns were usually short, it never diminished his credibility. He was always a solid competitor and a reliable tag team partner. But the real highlight of Tony's tag team career came when he teamed up with Rick Martel. The chemistry between them was undeniable. In 1980, they took the titles from the Wild Samoans, Afa and Sika. Their first run with the belts lasted a few months, but they lost the titles to the Moondogs in March 1981. Undeterred, Garea and Martel went back to the drawing board and regained the titles in July of that same year. Their second reign was just as successful as the first, but once again, they lost the titles, this time to Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito in October 1981. Despite losing the belts multiple times, their partnership became legendary, and they're often remembered as one of the top tag teams in wrestling history. But Tony wasn't just a tag team guy. Throughout the mid-70s, he also worked in different territories outside of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He worked in places like San Francisco, Georgia, Los Angeles, Japan, and Australia, which gave him even more experience. In 1976, he and Pat Patterson captured the NWA World Tag Team Championship in San Francisco, showing that he could compete at a high level no matter where he went. Back in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, Tony had a few shots at the top singles titles too. He went up against superstar Billy Graham for the World Heavyweight Championship several times between 1977 and 1978, and even had a match against Harley Race for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in 1978. While Tony didn't end up as the top champion, these opportunities proved that he was considered a top-tier talent, not just a tag team wrestler. As the 80s rolled around though, Tony's role in the company started to change. After Martel left the WWF in 1982, Garea kept on wrestling, teaming up with various partners. But by the mid-80s, his role had shifted. Instead of being a main eventer or tag team champion, he became more of an enhancement talent. This is a term used in wrestling to describe veterans who help younger stars look good by losing to them in competitive matches. Garea, despite not being the focus anymore, was still a key part of helping up-and-coming wrestlers. He didn't mind putting over new talent, and in fact, he embraced the role. It wasn't the most glamorous position, but it was an important one. It also gave him a chance to show off his professionalism and help elevate the next generation of wrestlers. Even when his in-ring career came to a close, Tony's association with the WWE didn't end. He transitioned into a backstage role as a road agent, helping to coordinate matches, work with the talent, and make sure everything ran smoothly during live events. This job was crucial in ensuring that the company's shows went off without a hitch, and Tony was a perfect fit. He had the experience, the respect of his peers, and the knowledge of how things worked both in front of and behind the camera. His work as a road agent lasted long after he stopped wrestling, continuing well into the 2000s, even up until 2014. During this time, Tony would occasionally make appearances on WWE TV, but by now he was more of a behind-the-scenes guy. In 2007, he reunited with Rick Martel at The Vengeance, Night of Champions pay-per-view to help out other legends like Sergeant Slaughter and Jimmy Snuka. But despite all his success, both in and out of the ring, there's one thing that still stands out. Tony Garea has never been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Given his 5 tag team championships, his years of service to the company, and his role in helping to build up wrestling, it's a bit surprising that he hasn't been honored with a Hall of Fame induction. Fans still debate why that is. Garea himself has joked about it, wondering if maybe he wasn't old enough yet, or if a missed phone call years ago was about a potential induction. Whatever the reason, the fact remains that he has yet to be inducted, and it's a topic that comes up whenever people discuss his career. When you think about Tony Garea's time in wrestling, what stands out is his versatility. Whether it was as a tag team champion, an enhancement talent, or a trusted road agent, he was always reliable. He adapted to whatever the company needed from him, and he did it with professionalism and class. Garea's career might not have had the same flashy moments as some of his peers, but it's undeniable that he played a huge role in the wrestling world, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. And while the WWE Hall of Fame may have missed the mark on him, his legacy in wrestling is secure. He was a true company man, and his contributions are remembered by the fans who saw him put his heart into the business every step of the way.